future that we can all be proud of. Confident because we're creating a resilient, a diverse and people-powered economy that allows us to live larger lives and cope with the challenges ahead. Caring because we're redefining the welfare state, striving to end inequality, and committed to redistributing both wealth and power. We have the 5th largest economy in the world. In such a country, no renter should have to live in damp, cold, or neglected accommodation. No parent should have to compete with other parents to find their child a decent school. No one should have to wait 10 hours in an emergency ward before getting the care and attention they need. When I go to my children's school, I walk into the foyer and I'm presented with a huge board right in the middle of the school. Everyone sees it when they come in. And on that board are 3 concentric circles. In those circles is every picture of every child in the school with their name underneath. And those children that have made 3 levels of progress are there in the centre. That's where 2 of my children are. Those children that have made no progress are pictured on the outside of those circles, stigmatised for everyone to see. None of my children want that. None of the teachers in their heart of hearts want that. They want an education system that works for everyone. When I go to a hospital, as I did last year, and I go with my son as a regular user, I don't want to have my hospital appointment cancelled 3 times, my operation cancelled 3 times for my son. It's not fair on him, it's not fair on the others. When I go to a basic hospital appointment, I don't have to want to wait 2 hours only for that appointment to be cancelled. We can have a different future. One where we all have the security and the choices we deserve. For a basic income which allows us to fulfil our potential and, yes, let's say it, our dreams. No one should tell you that your voice doesn't matter. That when it comes to the biggest decision this country has faced in generations, you will not get a say on whether, having seen what life outside the EU will look like, we should choose that future or choose to remain. The media, with respect, and the old parties will tell you that there are only 2 options on the ballot paper at this election. It's not true. That is a disservice to our democracy. If you believe in a welcoming Britain, a country of compassion, a fair economy where those with the most contribute more, the protection of our countryside, a nation confident enough to build bridges, not walls, then you have a choice. If you believe things can change for the better and that the next generation must be defined by fairness, not food banks, then we will give you that choice. If you believe that our future will be defined not by the size of our nuclear arsenal, but by harnessing the enormous potential of the people who live right here in this country, then join us and stand up for what really matters. And on June the 8th, choose a positive future and vote Green for a confident and caring Britain. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm very, very proud to introduce Caroline Lucas. She's defending to be re-elected as MP for Brighton Pavilion for the 2nd time now. And she just gets more and more popular there, as far as I can tell. Caroline Lucas.
Thanks so much, Sian, and thank you to everyone for being here. I'm delighted to be with Jonathan and launching this wonderful Green Guarantee. And first of all, I want to thank Wyra for hosting this launch in this amazing place. Because since 2012, they've supported the creation of 160 new startups. They've been getting behind bold, creative new ideas and shaping the future through brave leadership. And by being here today, we're choosing a future of opportunities for pioneers and innovators like them. We're here choosing a new kind of economy that meets people's needs and makes sure we protect the environment. A confident and caring Britain that reaches for a bigger future that we can be proud of. The Green Guarantee is about hope, and we need hope now like never before. I can't remember a time in my own lifetime where the future has felt more uncertain, with Brexit, with accelerating climate change, with an NHS in crisis. We face challenges that we can't possibly pretend to fix in the next 100 days or the next 1,000. Threats to our economic future, threats to our security, threats to our planet. But ours is a message of hope because we believe that if we stand together for what matters, we can change the course of history. We can meet these enormous challenges. So while other parties ignore the environment, Greens will protect it. We will continue to set the agenda with bold policies to transform people's lives, with things like a pilot for a basic income scheme and a shorter working week. We'll protect the NHS. We'll properly fund it, yes, but crucially we'll also take the private sector out of it. We'll repeal the Health and Social Care Act and replace it with the NHS Reinstatement Act. That's a bill that I've had the honour of presenting to Parliament a couple of times now already as private members' bills. We'll also proudly stand up for free movement, and we'll give the British people an explicit option to remain part of the EU as part of a ratification referendum on the Brexit deal. And let me say a few more words just now about Brexit, this huge challenge that's facing us, in our view, the huge threat that is facing us in terms of the extreme Brexit, which Theresa May is pursuing. So let us make no mistake, she has no mandate for the kind of Brexit she is pursuing, out of the single market, out of the customs union, leaving key social and environmental protections behind, leaving free movement. That was not on the ballot paper. Yes, there was a vote to leave, but it's not clear what that leave looks like in practice, which is why we say it is right for the British public to have a final say on the deal, not just MPs, as Theresa May would have it. It was the British people that set off this process. It is the British people who should be able to look at the small print of the final deal. And if they like it, then fine. But if they don't, then we should have that right to remain inside the EU. And that is what the Green Party is offering. We are also saying to EU nationals who have made their lives here in good faith that, of course, your future here should be guaranteed immediately now, not using them cynically as bargaining chips, as Theresa May is doing. And we are the one party that is proud to stand up for the wonderful gift that is free movement. It is an extraordinarily precious gift to be able to work and to travel and to live and to learn and to love in 27 other member states. My kids, I want them to benefit from that. I want everyone's kids to benefit from that. And I want to broaden that out so that everyone can benefit. And do you know what? I feel that in particular it is young people who have been betrayed by this Brexit vote, because we know the majority of young people want to stay inside the EU. And in our manifesto, in our Green Guarantee today, we are talking particularly to young people. We're making a pitch to them saying not just that we think they've been betrayed by the decision on this extreme Brexit, but also they are being burdened by debt, which is why we'd scrapped tuition fees, and we're delighted that Labour's caught up with us on that one. It's also why we want to see a genuinely affordable housing, including rent caps and longer tenancies, and we would set up what we're calling a living rent commission, so we could start looking to see what would be a reasonable rent given the cost of living in different areas, rather than making it clear that young people are never going to be able to save up enough for any kind of deposit because they are constantly paying over the odds rent. But also, one of the biggest ways we are letting down our young people is on the environment. Last year was the hottest year on record. The 2016 State of Nature report said that 60% of species in the UK are in long-term decline, 15% at risk of disappearing from our shores altogether. Now, we launched an environment manifesto, a specific environment manifesto last week. And in that, we pledged a new Environment Protection Act, which would safeguard and enhance the environment upon which we depend for literally everything. It set out our approach to key threats like air pollution. Air pollution is a public health emergency. It is linked to the premature deaths of 40,000 people in this country. and yet it hardly even made it into the Tory manifesto. It sets out as well the kinds of policies we have around investment in renewables, energy efficiency, keeping fossil fuels in the ground. But it also crucially sets out how we would protect that body of EU law that currently protects our environment and which we need it to have safeguarded and enhanced in a post-Brexit world. And what we're talking about there is making sure that that legislation is not only transferred from the EU to the UK statute books, but that it is properly enforceable. We need the legal architecture there to make sure that in the absence of the European Commission or the European Court of Justice, we can enforce that law. So Brexit, the environment, the NHS in crisis, we face huge challenges, huge questions. But I'm proud that the Green Party is at least beginning to is asking those questions and is beginning to get some of the answers as well. And we want to have that debate with you about the kind of answers to these major questions we face today. This election is about what kind of future we want for our children. It is about protecting our values of openness, of compassion, of cooperation. It's about our promise that a confident and caring future is possible if we work together, if we do politics differently, and if we dare to be more ambitious. So the guarantee says we're ready, and we hope you'll join us by voting Green on June the 8th.
So we have time for some questions. Would anyone like to ask Caroline and Jonathan?
Libby Wiener, ITV News. Many of your policies seem very, very close indeed to Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party. Are people really getting a choice in this election?
Well, they certainly are. And first of all, of course, they say, don't they, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So we're very glad that Jeremy Corbyn has obviously been looking at our 2015 general election manifesto and taken lots of our policies like bringing rail back into public ownership, cancelling tuition fees and so on. But there are some very important things that sadly he is not doing. Brexit is the obvious one. I feel so let down by the fact that Labour has not been a rigorous opposition when it comes to Brexit. Essentially, they have allowed the government to have a blank cheque on a hard Brexit. And not only that, they help them cash it in at the bank as well. So on Brexit, we are very clear that we want as close as a relationship to the EU as possible. We want to be part of the single market. We want to stand up for free movement. Labour's not offering that. On the environment and climate change, they don't go nearly as far as we do. And they cannot be champions of renewable energy and then also support money for Hinkley Nuclear Power Station. They cannot be peacemakers and still support over 100 billion for Trident nuclear weapons. So sadly, we feel there's still quite a long way to go from Labour, and we're proud to be offering something very distinct.
Professor Chapman, 5 News. Is there a danger, though, that people might understand and respect your Remain message, but be put off by your more radical, costly policies when it comes to scrapping tuition fees, paying off student debt?
I think we need to have an honest conversation about taxation in this country. Look at Germany. It spends 44% of its gross domestic product on public expenditure. We're hitting 40% and heading downwards. It is absurd that the Conservative government said it was going to pay off the deficit whilst cutting corporation tax for the rich corporations and their excess profits. How is that going to work? They have no economic credibility. We can be like Germany. We can find 75, perhaps 100 billion pounds, if we're moving up to German levels, of proper investment. The money is there. The problem is that the money is in the wrong hands. It needs the political will to make those decisions. The Resolution Foundation estimates that because just the corporation tax cuts since 2010 through to today, cutting from 27, 28% down to 19% and now wanted to go down to 17%, we could have 125 billion pounds more. If we carry on in that direction, 235 billion pounds more. Now, the NHS budget is around 125, 130 billion. That gives you an idea of how much money there is. But it requires the political will to do it. And I think people are getting that. They're responding to that. And we're seeing it over social care. The Conservatives have clearly scored a massive own goal politically about pursuing this social care policy where people are going to lose their homes, anything over £100,000. And suddenly people are saying, hang on, It doesn't have to be this way. If we hadn't made those cuts, there could have been the investment in social care. There's only a crisis now in social care because of underinvestment. Yes, the ageing population is coming, but the crisis right now is here because of Tory mismanagement of the economy and making the wrong choices over the last 7 years. People are getting that, and people are wanting that progressive taxation. They realise that the money has been sucked out of the economy, it's gone for excess profits into corporations, and it doesn't have to be like this.
Anyone else? Oh, that's
Kate Forrester, looking to post. Do you believe that there's still a 48% sort of remaining contingent, or do you feel the mood has kind of shifted now? I think some people who may think that we still just need to get on with Brexit, and do you think on that you might be slightly out of touch?
But I think the critical thing here is that there is going to be a period of time for the negotiation, the next 18 months or so, and at the end of that, at the moment, it's proposed that that should come back to Parliament to sign it off. The distinction we're making is that it should come back to the British public. So we're not suggesting that these negotiations should go on any longer than Theresa May is. But what we are saying, crucially, is that democracy has to be at the front and centre of the decision. And therefore it is right that the British people get to see what the final deal looks like. And already we're seeing so many of the promises that we were made unravelling. I mean, the famous, of course, the 350 million for the NHS weekly has been, you know, it was evaporated within a couple of days of the referendum result. But things like the threats of Turkey joining the EU, or all kinds of other threats that were made, which are now unravelling at the same time as things like inflation is going up and people are beginning to realise that it is going to cost them to leave the EU. So given that I think we're going to have a lot more information about what leave really looks like over the next 18 months or so, I think it's absolutely right that people get the right to look at that small print.
There was another hand at the back a minute ago. I don't know if that's...
Hello, Mike White from the New European. We haven't heard much from Andrea Leadsom in this campaign. I hope she's not unwell. We do hear from Mr. Trump. Is it your impression that in the battle for control of the presidency, that the grown-ups are winning on the environmental agenda, or that the kindergarten tendency is still in charge? Candidate.
Well, I'm doing that one, am I?
You're all friends with Michael.
Well, I think the latter of those two options seems to be rather more likely, unfortunately. There is a real fight on our hands to be serious about what will happen to the Paris Climate Agreement and so forth. But you know what? Even if the worst happens and Trump completely turns his back on it, I think the good news is that there is so much momentum behind the green economy, behind green energy, behind renewables and green technologies. It is already telling its own economic story, which is that it is cheaper than the fossil fuel alternatives. So I think it's going to be far too late to try and turn that back. So yes, at this critical moment, it will be wonderful to have more real champions of shifting to that greener society, greener energy, greener economy. We need that. But the worst case scenario that some people are painting, i.e. that Paris could completely collapse because of Trump, I don't think will happen, because I think the economics are speaking for themselves. It makes economic sense to be investing in green energy, not just environmental sense.
So Trump doesn't have a veto on this. It's too late for that.
I think it's too late for that.
Hi, Peter Walker from the Guardian. Sorry, we were accidentally
Out!
The Progressive Alliance so far doesn't seem to have come to much, and the poll ratings are kind of more or less what they were. Have you got a metric for what success would look like in this election? And it looks much like it did for the 2015 election. What else can you do to try and get the green message over to people?
I say, well, I think the metric is the fact that despite, it was disappointing that the Labour leader and the Liberal Democrat leader didn't respond to our joint letter right at the beginning of the campaign as a priority to come and talk, to have conversations about this. But you know what? There's an insurrection going on, and that's what the metric is. In 30 seats around the country, people are talking. Green candidates have shown leadership and stood aside. And if there are wins in those seats, it will be the Greens what won it. Absolutely clear. But this election is the beginning, not the end. We're looking at a system which is creaking under the strain. In 1950, 95% of people voted for the two big parties. Now we're down to 2/3. Clearly the system is fragmenting. It's the system that has not caught up. The Green Party is clearly ahead of the curve on this and is looking at what kind of control, what kind of democracy we want for the 21st century. Have you done it again without you did that without moving your hands? That's very impressive. And so, I think it's clear that things are heading in the right direction. And this is the start of a very important process. And I'm proud of the party for making that stand and leading the way.
Okay. there any more questions? No?
Otherwise, we'll do a quick.
Do you want to?
Yep.
I'll just like
This one here.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.